Good morning, dear children. I am your English teacher. Today, let us learn a beautiful story from English 1, lesson number 1. Lesson number 1, a witty answer. This is a story by one of the most famous writers of olden times. In those days, specially trained hawks were used in hunting. Hawks meaning birds. Now let's start. A certain nobleman, whose name was Curado, was a gallant and worthy citizen, delighting much in hounds and hawks. Having caught a fat young crane one day with his hawk, he sent it home to his cook with orders to prepare it for supper. So certain nobleman means a respected person, whose name was Curado, was a gallant, means very brave and worthy citizen, very much delighting in hounds and hawks, means a hunting birds, having caught a fat young crane one day with his hawk, and he sent it home to his cook with orders to prepare it for supper, for dinner. The cook, who was a poor and simple fellow, chose the bird and set it over the fire to roast. When it was nearly done, a friend chanced to come into the kitchen, and being attracted by the good smell, earnestly begged for a leg of the crane. So the cook, who was a poor and simple fellow, he twisted the bird, means tie up the wings, okay, tie up the wings and legs of birds, and set it over the fire to roast. But when it was nearly done, one of his friends came into the kitchen, and being attracted by the good smell, and seriously begged for a leg of the crane to eat. But he replied, "Nah, no, you shall have no leg from me," said the cook. Annoyed at this refusal, the friend replied, "Very well, then you need never again expect any favor from me." Then his friend said that, "Okay, fine, if you don't want to share that, okay, fine, but never expect any help from me in the future." At once a quarrel arose, and was carried to a great height between them. At length, for the sake of peace, the cook was obliged to curb a leg from the crane and gave it to his friend. So the bird was served up at supper with only one leg. So after having a quarrel for some time, that was carried to a great height, that's why the cook, for the sake of peace, he offered a leg of the crane to his friend. So the bird was served up at supper with only one leg. So Curado, who had a friend at supper with him, at once sent for the cook and asked angrily what had become of the other leg of the crane. So at that night, Curado invited one of his friends for dinner, and they were sitting together. And when Curado saw that crane with only one leg, he got very angry and asked his cook that what had become of the other leg of the crane. And the cook replied after a moment. He said that a crane has only one leg, sir. Next. Next. "What do you mean?" cried Curado in great wrath. "Only one leg? Do you think I have never seen a crane in my life?" Then when his cookman replied that a crane has only one leg, then he got very angry. Cried Curado in great wrath, means he shouted at him with great anger, and he said that, "Only one leg? What do you think? Do you think I'm a fool? Do you think I have never seen a crane in my life that you're telling me that crane has only one leg?" Then the cook said, believe me, sir, it is as I say, and I will prove it to you whenever you please, from a living crane," declared the cook. The cook replied, "Believe me, sir, I will prove it to you. Just give me a chance. I will prove it to you from a living crane." "Well," said Kurad, who did not choose to have any more words in the presence of his friend, "as you offer to show me a thing which I have never seen before, I am content to have it proved tomorrow morning. But if you are wrong, as indeed you must be, I will trash you, so that you will remember tomorrow as long as you live. Then Curado, he did not choose to have any word in front of his friend, and he said that, as you offer to show me a thing which I've never seen before, okay, I am ready, and you have to prove it to me by tomorrow morning itself. But if you are wrong, if you proved me wrong, then don't forget, I will trash you, means I will beat you, or I will punish you, so that you will remember tomorrow as long as you live. The next, there the matter ended that night, but Curado, whose anger at the man's impudence had hardly allowed him to get any rest, rose early. He called for horses and took the cook along with him towards a river where he had often seen plenty of cranes at that early hour of the day. Then that matter ended after that night somehow. But Curado, whose anger at the man's impudence means impudence, disrespect. He could not sleep. He could not sleep last night because he thought that how my cook disrespect me in front of my friend. That hardly allowed him to get rest, and he rose up early, and he came. He called for horses and took the cook along with him towards a river where he had often seen plenty of cranes at that early hour of the day. We shall soon see, he said to the cook, how much truth was in your words spoken last night, the Curado said to his cook. The cook was now fairly at his wits' end. Gladly would he have made his escape, but he knew that there was now little hope of doing so. Means, wit means an intelligent or clever. Last night somehow he saved himself from his master by using his wits, but now gladly would he have made his escape, but he knew that there was now little hope of doing so. All of a sudden they came inside of the river. He happened to see before anything else a number of cranes. They were each standing on one leg, as cranes usually do when they are sleeping. All of a sudden the cranes came inside of the river. He, means a cook happened to see before anyone else a number of cranes. They were standing on one leg. Okay, they were standing on one leg, as cranes usually do when they are sleeping, with a sigh of relief. Okay, with a sigh of relief, the cook pointed them out to Curado, saying, now, sir, you yourself can see that I spoke nothing but the truth when I said that cranes have only one leg, he said to his master. Next, Curado looked at the birds, then replied, yes, true, but I will show you different. Then riding up to the birds, he cried out, shoo, shoo. At once, each crane set down the other foot, and after taking a few steps or two, they all flew away. Then Curado looked at the birds and he replied, okay, yes, that's true, but let me show you the I will show you the different way. Then riding up the birds, he cried out, he shouted, shoo, shoo. Then when he shouted, shoo, shoo, at once, each crane sat down the other foot before they were standing in one foot, and when they usually do while they're sleeping. But now when they heard sound shoo shoo, at once each crane sat down the other foot, and after taking a step or two, they all flew away. Curado then turned to the cook and said angrily, well, fellow, do you believe now that cranes have two legs? What can you what can you say to save yourself from the thrashing that I promised you? Then they saw together that crane have two legs. Then Curado said that, Well, fellow, do you believe now that crans have two legs? He asked to his cook. Now, what can you say to save yourself from thrashing that I promised last night? Only this, sir, replied the cook, making a brave effort. His cook said that. Only this, sir, replied the cook, making a brave effort to gather his wits. Okay. Had you but called shoo shoo to that crane last night, it might have put down the other leg too, as this bird did now. Then he replied in a very brave way, because he was very clever, and he asked his master that, Master, had you called out shoo shoo, okay, while you're about to kill that crane which I cooked last night? If you do so, it might have put down the other leg too, but you didn't. Okay, so you might have been saved all this journey. He said it to his master in a very clever way. In the last paragraph, well said, fellow, well said, declared Curado, laughing. Your ready wit has saved your skin. He said that, okay. He said, very well, you were right. He said this by laughing and said, you're ready with your cleverness saved you from my punishment. Now let us go home. Thus the cook escaped a beating, okay, from his master and made peace with his master. So likewise, this story ended up here. So I hope all of you have noted down the notes which I have sent. Now read all the question answer and prepare well for the exam. Thank you very much.